Hi, this is Steve Costello, aka PoorUser from CardRunners.com. I'll be making my second 6 minutes video today. Um, Again, I'll be six tabling on PokerStars. Um, this session, again, like most of the other ones, is really regular heavy. There's not really too many fish at all. Um, Punketti is obviously a really big regular. Ooh, HT Max are all Gith. These are all really good regulars, so it'll I'm planning to play a little bit more basic. I had been playing for about 3 hours already when I decided to start recording. I'd been doing pretty horribly actually, especially against Punketti. I was trying to destroy him and it was 100% not working at all. So, I mean, at this point, I'm kind of starting to switch it up, play a little tighter, a little less dumb, I suppose. But the reason that's kind of important to know is on the first hand, I have King Queen on table one. I'm just gonna call them 1, 2, 3 across the top, and then 4, 5, 6 on the bottom. Usually this is a spot I would flat, but I'd been raising almost all of his C bets. I've been 3-betting him a lot and all that kind of stuff. Plus, we're deep, so I mean, I think this is kind of an okay raise to begin with, anyways. So I went ahead and raised. He'd been playing really well the whole time, so when he called, I wasn't. When a 9 comes on the turn, that completes a lot of a lot of weird gut shots. Also, he has like a bunch of 9-8s and 8-9, or just all kinds of weird stuff. So I decided to just play it cautiously, in the sake of just not going crazy. He ended up having ace queen, so I probably lost the minimum there. So, anyways, pretty much everyone at tables are regulars, I think, with the exception of maybe Paslepa on table 2 and Vagustus on table 6. So I'm going to try and play reasonably tight. I've already kind of paid for getting a looser image, so I'm just going to try and hopefully let hands come to me and do that. So, all that aside, I flatted ace king on the button. For two reasons, really. One was just because I hadn't in like half a year, and I decided that this would be a good time to do it. The other is that I'm assuming Paslepa's not that good, and I would much rather have him in the pot than go up against Oo's 5-bet shoving range. Well, like if I 4-bet here and get it against Ooh, it's definitely gonna be EV plus, but at the same time, Paslepa's under the gun, Ooh is under the gun +1, and I'm 4-betting that, so I don't expect Ooh to 5-bet shove too late, even though I am on the button. So I figured for once, though my standard will still be to 4-bet, I figured I'd play a hand in position on the button with hopefully Paslepa calling and try to play it out from there. Plus, if I had an ace or king, my hand looks really disguised because it kind of looks like I have 10s or jacks or just something not so good. So if I actually connect, which I didn't, I can expect to get paid a pretty good amount of the time. So Paslepa did end up calling, and then the flop goes check, Ooh checks, and then once Ooh finally checks, I will check behind. I decided not to steal it because I don't really know what Paslepa's up to as of yet. So, plus, I mean, I could still hit an ace or king and get value from ace queen or really anything. So Paslepa leads this turn, and my feelings right away are that that's a pretty strong bet, and given that he's under the gun and he just flatted a 3-bet and a call from the button, I don't see him having all that much. I mean, he could have ace jack, but I feel like he would have played queens, kings, and aces fast. Maybe 10s he's going to bet once, but he could also have like a turn flush draw, a flop flush draw, just some random hand that's not very good at all. So I decided to call once, uh, given that I really only thought he could have ace jack and jacks, maybe like king jack sometimes. And but even still, like him calling king jack out of position there to the preflop action isn't going to be that good. Same thing with ace jack. So I mean, I didn't see him having too much. So I figured I'd call once and then kind of reevaluate on the river. I eventually call. River is an offsuit 7, and that really doesn't help any of the hands that I'd put him on. Um, so, unless if he does bet again. And my feeling here is that if he doesn't have ace jack or jacks, or just like a really weirdly played queens, I don't think he can have all too much. Um, Again, I thought it was possible he might have had like king jack on the flop or on the turn, but I didn't see him just betting because 490 is a pretty reasonable size bet for the river. I wasn't sure he would bet that on the turn and then bet that on the river. He did end up having a flush draw, which is kind of what it looks like he's going to have a pretty large amount of the time. But I mean, I also play the hand that way just because I was hoping to get into spots like that where his hand's gonna be face up a lot and I can play well against it. All right, so Mucked Boy is on a lot of my tables. I've never really played with him, but I'm pretty sure he's a regular. He just kind of sat down when I started recording, so I don't really have any history with him. Here's a hand that I would usually fold. But because I had been kind of dinking around with Punketti some unsuccessfully, decided I'd keep that streak going. And on table 3, I elected a 3-bet ooh just because, it's a spot that he's going to be 3-betting a lot, and I should be 4-betting a lot. There's no real reason other than just because of positions and because he 3-bets a lot, and I open a lot from back positions. So, again, I could have led on this turn with Punketti. So I don't think he's going to fold that much, I think he's going to fold a pretty decent amount of time if you check back the flop. But my other feeling was that if I can pretty much take all strong hands out of his range, I'd rather let him bluff at the turn so I can check raise, assuming that I'm almost never getting shoved on. And I mean, I can also, if he did like turn a weird queen, I'm pretty sure I can get him off it by check raising and shoving the river. Plus, I still have outs. So I raised to 460 or something, which gives me about pot left to shove on the river. And he folded, so I mean, he just completely whiffed anyways. But like in a spot like that where you can pretty much take all strong hands out of his range, I'd rather check raise him if I think he's going to bet that pretty often. Alright, so this guy Axel or whatever on table 1 is also not a regular or close to it. He min raised. I'm always going to call his Jack 10, though I'm not completely thrilled about it. Flop's good for me. I'm not going to do anything crazy. I'm just going to check call. And since he checked behind, I can bet now. And I have another hand against him going on table 3, where I raised pre and then bet the flop and he called. He bets the river. This is a really standard fold against most people, but I elected to call really, really quickly, given that he was just kind of out of line and doing everything. He ended up having the super full house, which is not beatable by queens. But, I mean, I don't really hate a call there at all. Let's see. Here I have 7s, which I'm going to bet 3 ways. And if Axel calls, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be ahead of him a pretty good amount of the time. But HT Max is really tight nowadays, I think. So, I mean, if he even just calls, I don't really like my spot. The fact that he's check raised makes me fold really quickly. I mean, it's possible he could make that move with 7-8, but I mean, I have 2 7s, so I mean, it's unlikely to begin with, but it is, it's unlikely, but plus I have 2/7, so it makes it even less likely. So on table 2, I raised and Punketti called, and I bet the flop, and he called, and a lot of times I'd been check folding turns. So even though that's 7 lets 8/9 get there, I'm still pretty sure I have the best hand by a pretty good amount, and I think he would have raised better on the flop. So I decided to check raise this turn, just because I've been winning a lot of hands from him lately, and probably probably making a sizable bet on good rivers, and I mean if the river's a diamond or something, I'm not really sure what my plan is. Yeah, I guess I'm probably gonna have to check fold, I guess. But I mean, on good rivers, I'm really happy to bet like 3/4 pot there, since my line looks a bit drawing, a bit airish, and I'm hoping I'm finally kind of getting on his nerves because he had been massacring me for the past 2 hours or 3 hours or whatever. So I was kind of hoping or expected to get called a little light there. Alright, so I'm not going to talk too much about, like, obviously, I think I've said this before, but just like pre-flop raising and folding. Like, most of the stuff is pretty obvious. I mean, I feel that you can kind of just raise anything from any position as long as you have a good idea about who's at the table, and you should be able to decide if it's going to be EV plus or not. So I mean, I'll be raising the same hand in some spots and folding in other spots, and it's just kind of because I feel like it. So unless I'm going to be 3-betting or making some unusual fold pre-flop, I'm probably not going to mention it too much unless nothing is happening. Just because there's a lot more interesting and better stuff to talk about. Um, let's see now. Speaking of, yeah, I folded ace-10 there just because Ooh is someone who at first I did not actually think was that good, but I mean, the more and more I begin to play with him, the more I realize he's quite good. So I'm not going to be playing ace-10, probably even ace-jack, hands that I'm not going to be happy calling a 3-barrel with when I hit a good board. I'm definitely not going to be playing those hands against more aggressive and good players like him. Again, most of these tables are just kind of heinous. I think I was just in the mood to play, but if anyone's a fan of game selecting, this probably is not. I mean, there's really like one bad player maybe at the tables. Tom Luke just sat, I guess. Maybe that's how you say his name. He's a really tight player, I think. Let's see. Yeah, I mean a lot of the games have been getting a lot more reg heavy lately. So I guess it's really just about kind of playing ABC-ish and just kind of hoping to kill the fish and whatnot. But alright, anyways, all that Jim Jammer aside. Alright, on table 6, I have Augustus Minrays, who's probably the weakest of everyone who's playing right now. And I 3-bet him, and I probably should have bet the flop, but I didn't because I just didn't. And I check it down, and that's that. On table 2, the flop goes check, and I lead the turn. Pretty confident that I have the best hand, but HT max raises, and some people, I'm definitely going to call here. I have 6 outs almost always. Plus, I'm just usually good most of the time. But HT max is pretty tight, and yeah, you can have queen jack here, ace jack, ace queen, ace 9, ace 8, but I think he has like a check behind king or tens, or I don't even know. But I mean, I'm not expecting him to bluff me that much, so I'm just gonna give him credit. And on table 4, um, I we were both deep, and we'd been battling a bit too. I decided to raise the flop, which is pretty reasonable. I mean, I'm not expecting him to call a pretty good amount of the time. And he, in fact, does not call. He raises. He raises to 400. And my immediate thoughts are that um, he raised a really small amount, so like immediately I don't want to fold, but I'm also thinking because of his raise size, he probably doesn't have a flush draw. It seems a bit small. So I'm thinking that if I call, and I can call obviously just to get the first straight, but if a club gets there, I think there's a reasonable chance I can win the pot. Um, it kind of looks like he has aces or kings or maybe even a set, but I mean hopefully he doesn't have aces because that kind of kills my outs. But so he checks on the club turn. At this point, I'm feeling pretty good. I elected to bet a really small amount for 2 reasons. One, if he has a set, or well, actually, I bet this amount because obviously I wanted to have a round pot to shove on the river, but also that if he check calls such a small bet on the turn, it really feels likely to me that he doesn't have a flush. So that's the first part, and then by shoving pot on the river, I really think I'm going to get a fold out of sets, kings, aces. I'm not even really expecting aces or kings to call us bet on the turn, but yeah, it's just the only hand I can have that doesn't beat kings or ace queen right away is king jack, and it's much more likely that I have a set or a flush draw of some kind. So if he calls the turn, it's pretty likely he has a set and is trying to boat up. So as long as the board doesn't pair, I'm going to shove pretty happily on the river. If the river is a club, I think I'm still committed to shoving. He will show up with like ace of clubs, queen, or aces with the ace of clubs sometimes, but I think he's just going to be folding so much that I'm going to have to shove anyways. I mean, this is obviously, I'm also going to bet 3 here, 10 with the flush, obviously, because just to be able to make my bluffs believable. But I mean, this is kind of a really important spot where like betting 670 or something would be way less good, because then he can just be like, well, I have a set and maybe I'm not going to fold because I have a set. But at least by playing it this way, he's probably not going to check shove a set on the turn, and it gives him a chance to check call and then check fold a blank river, or just kind of fold right away, because it's pretty unlikely that I'm not going to shove the river after the flop and turn action. So I see him finding a fold there with aces and kings on the turn a lot too, even to such a small bet. So on table 1, I'm just going to make a standard C bet. Again, if axe help calls, I'm not really sure my hand is good, but I at least like playing heads up against him. Here's a spot where I almost always 2-barrel, but I'm just not expecting axe help to fold that much, regardless of what he has. Even if he has like 3s, I'm not overly confident that'll fold. I obviously beat 3s, but that's not entirely the point. But 7s ended up being good 3-way. 2-barrel there would have been pretty nice. Axel had 5-6, I think, if I check, or 4-5, yeah. Here, Muck Boy is 3-bet me for maybe the 3rd or 4th time. Maybe it's like the 3rd time, I think. He'd been doing it a little bit before I started recording. So, and on top right, here I have an open-end straight draw. Well, I have the low open-end straight draw against a really tight and solid player. I turn mid pair, and again, this is a spot where would probably two barrel a decent amount of people, but I just decided not to. And again, this is a spot where I probably should have called, probably could have called, but I just see him. I feel like he just always has a hand that crushes me because just by virtue of him being a really tight player. So, yes. I guess I call with 9-6 of clubs against Gith open um, for some reason. And he checked the flop, so I mean, I'm obviously going to take a stab at it. And on table 6, I'm two barreling here because I've seen Vagustus call flop raises with just our flop bets with just anything, like a lot of ace highs, a lot of straight draws. He has those way more often than he does a jack or something. Again, that two barrel is very player dependent. I mean, a lot of the tighter players are always going to have a jack there and not going to be folding to a two barrel. But if you see someone peeling with ace high a bunch and like queen 10 there, then it becomes a pretty easy two barrel, especially when I have outs. So, yeah, I'm doing a lot more. I'm doing a lot more of just trying to get. I'm trying to get into a lot of pots with Augustus again in position, which has kind of been my theme for most of the videos I think I've made. A lot of just playing a lot of hands in position against bad people. And other than that, I'm trying to play on the more standard side. Again, despite the couple bluffs I've made lately, I'm not expecting to get that much credit because I think when I started recording, I was down 4 or 5 buy-ins, despite my stack sizes. I think I do finish around even, or a bit above even maybe, but even still. Yeah, a lot of playing long sessions at higher limits is just, or even like mid to higher limits is, it's really important to, I mean, if you tilt, that's one thing and you have to stop, but if you can play like through just brutal, like if you start and you, for whatever reason, you dump 4 or 5 buy-ins for, if you get bad beat it or get caught bluffing, and then you tilt and you leave, you kind of, I mean, you're losing so much value in just being able to play after that happens. Because you're obviously going to get less respect from a lot of players and stuff like that, so here I 3-bet Punketti for whatever reason. So yeah, I mean, I think at higher limits, or mid to mid-high limits, it's really important to be able to not tilt when things are not going your way. Because when you leave when things are not going well for you, you're losing a lot of value. And here's a failed 4-bet on table 4. I just did it because I've been 3-bet a lot. Obviously didn't. He shoved pretty quickly over that, so what can you do? But yeah. So yeah, long point short, just it's better to not. It's better to learn how to not tilt and utilize the image that you're paying for. Because obviously if you don't, it feels like a huge waste. And then on table 5, this is right after my 4-bet fail, he comes out with a cold 4-bet, and I just instantly choose to not believe it. If he does have a hand here, good for him, but he's been 3-betting me a lot, and I just failed with a 4-bet. I'm just going to take the cooler if it's a cooler. We were like 130 big blinds deep, so my shove is a bit more than 100 big blinds, obviously. But I don't think the stack sizes matter that much different if it's 100 big blinds. So yeah, I mean, the fact that he folded there makes me at least think that he's going to be a pre-flop aggressive kind of regular. Again, I haven't really played with him, so I didn't have too many reads of any kind on him. So I'm just trying to piece together what I can about him. The very next hand, I decided to 3-bet Gith again. Just kind of to get on his nerves more. Um, I don't see Gith as the kind of regular that fights back too much. So figured it would be okay. On table 6, I call the flop because I have bottom pair and nut flush redraw, which I guess matters a bit. Turns to 10, which is a pretty terrible card for me. Gift bets, I'm clearly gonna fold. However, he checks, and when he checks, at this point I decided that my 6 is probably not gonna hold up very often, but it looks like a lot of hands in my range have improved by the 10. So I do decide to take a stab at it, and he does fold. That's another important thing, that if you're going to be calling light on flops, it's pretty important to still be able to turn hands that might have showdown value into bluffs, because like a card greatly helps your range, that or it's such a good card for your range that you can't just be checking down your weaker minor value hands. Yeah, I mean that's if you're playing if you're gonna be playing a lot of hands in position with a lot of calls and a lot of flop calls and turn calls and stuff. Alright. You see Ooh and Punketti are going at it on a couple tables. They've been battling just around as much. For a while it was just Punketti, Ooh, and myself playing three-handed on a couple tables. So I mean that's kind of what it still feels like. It feels like it's just us playing, and then other people are just kind of sitting there watching, except for Mucked Boy, I guess, who's three-betting every now and then. Cause I mean HT Max, at least from what's happened, isn't really doing anything. So if he gets in a hand, I'm not gonna give him any kind of problems. I'm just gonna be like, here you go, no problem. Same thing with Vernon H and Tom Luke and Gith to some extent. So yeah, I 3-bet Ooh, obviously on the button, and I 3-bet Punketti because we're deep and the positions are good for me to 3-bet, I think. I'm not really worried about anyone else behind doing anything. On table 2, I had raised the HT Max before I'd come to the conclusion that he was not fighting back at all. And I raised him with ace high or something, and he called with top pair. And then we checked it down, and and that was it. I just showed nothing. So I decided to do the same thing, and then I'm just expecting to check down the turn in the river. I mean, if the turn and the river both break out, then, maybe I'm going to look to value bet. But maybe not. Let's see. And also on table 1, I decided to c-bet a smaller amount because I feel like either Punketti on this flop is calling with an ace, or like a jack or queens or kings. But queens or kings are pretty unlikely given how much we're opening and the likelihood they would have 4-bet me out of position. So I mean, he's really only calling with an ace and sometimes a jack. So I mean, the pot's 273, but I mean, I'm not gonna bet like 230 into a pot where he's either 100% calling with a hand or otherwise he's folding. So I elected for a much smaller c-bet. Around half pot, I think. Obviously, I'm just checking table 2, and it's not a good run out for me. So I mean, I'm just gonna very happily check the river, and that'll be that. He ended up having queens, which, all right, good for you. It's not a bad play by him, I guess, but just the fact that he just keeps showing up with good hands over and over again while keeping the pot really small makes me not too worried about playing with him, at least when the whole rest of the table, or when at least Punketti and Ooh are at the table. So I'm not going to be worried about, again, what I was just saying, he's just kind of sitting there just kind of doing his own thing. And if I'm like opening up on Punketti or Nu, I'm not gonna worry about HT Max being the guy that's gonna start forward betting or trying to abuse it in any kind of way. Let's see. Gith opened. I could have 3-bet him, but I'm a little less likely to 3-bet Gith on table 6 because I really want Fagustus into the pot. So, I mean, obviously the more times you can bring a fish into the pot, the better usually. Obviously that's not a really good flop for me, so I'm gonna fold. It's pretty likely he would have folded to a raise, but and I do have double backdoor outs, but you know, sometimes it's just not worth it, I guess. Let's see. So yeah, 4-6 diamonds on table 4, and so it's the hand that should be a fold. But I guess maybe I might end up calling just because I've been getting the pots with Mucked Boy a bit. Nope, still folded anyways. I'm obviously gonna 3-bet Ace Jack of Spades here, and since it's four-handed, I might have gotten it in pre with him. It's really hard to say. I mean, you don't want to overreact to people just because they're 3-betting you here and there, but it's four-handed. I don't hate doing it once and then kind of taking a note. This turn is I probably should have just bet called the turn, but I did not. And then I checked the river as well. Actually, I didn't even realize the flush draw got there. I checked the river for 2 reasons. One, because there's a decent amount of tens in his range, and 2, well, I guess that was probably it. I called anyways. I probably shouldn't have, because there's not really any kind of bluff you can have. I didn't actually see. I remember being like, oh, he had a 10, and then I noticed he had a flush, and I didn't even realize a flush was possible. But yeah, I think that was just a bit sloppy. But there's just not really any bluffs in his range, and he's probably not value betting less. So I think a fold there is going to be better. On table 2, I raised Punketti called, pass Lepa 3-bet, and then call, and Punketti called again. The flop, he checked, and I like to just check. The turn is a really good turn for me, and I could have bet here, but I wasn't really sure what pass left was up to. I'd hate to get check raised off a hand. I'm not too worried about Punketti having a big hand. So, I mean, I just like to check, and then, maybe if a good river comes, I can get paid somehow. River's not especially good or bad for me, I guess. It does get checked around, and I do think I have the best hand. Yeah. Here I'm 3-betting Augustus on table 6, and I like to just call on table 4 with King Queen there. Because I mean, I've been squeezing a lot, and I think King Queen multi-way is going to be a hand that's going to play better just called than 3-bet. Especially with the Joe. I don't know who that guy is at all, so I want to kind of get into a pot with him and see what happens. Obviously, I flop a monster on table 6, and I just bet, and Augustus quickly folds. Flop a set on table 5, and it gets checked around eventually. Alright, so on table 4, both players check, and it just seems like a pretty good spot for me to take a stab. If I get called, I have a king and a queen is out usually. Not to mention, if an ace or a jack comes, that gives me more outs. Or a 9, obviously. Plus, when both players check, it's just pretty likely that they're going to be pretty weak. On 10xx, it's a little less likely that I'm going to get folds because people are check calling jacks there, or check calling 10x there. Um, so at this point, I feel like any kind of like mid kind of hand he has improved. Either if he has like Jack 10, 8 9, 8 7, 10 9, Queen Jack even. So I mean, I'm not gonna two barrel him there. If the turn had been like an ace or maybe like a 3 or yeah, or even a Jack maybe, just because I'd have a ton of outs, I probably would have bet again. But I elected not to. Yeah, I mean, I don't see him folding that hand on the turn. I'm sure he would have folded it to a three barrel, but I mean, I'm not gonna get completely out of line, totally out of line against some guy I don't know, just because he looks a bit weak. Um, let's see now. Table 3, I have ace queen. Obviously, it's a very easy raise. Um, Here, yeah, I think I went to the bathroom or something and paused, so there was a little bit of a skip ahead. Um, Here, I'm getting 3-bet by Mucked Boy again and I'm folding. I elect to 3-bet King Jack here, I guess, because, again, I'm not too worried about HT Max fighting back with a 4-bet. And, I don't think Punketti's going to be calling that much either, because he's out of position. Plus, I mean, I just have a good hand for us all being 2 binds deep. Um, so yeah, obviously I have aces in the big blind. I'm gonna 3-bet the Joe. Again, this is a guy who I didn't really know, and I'm pretty happy. I'm obviously really happy with this spot. Duh, goes without saying. And obviously I'm going to raise queens. He makes a really small 3-bet here, or 4-bet. And usually I'm just going to shove over this, but because we were just a bit deeper than 100 big blinds, I felt that he could have a little bit more air than usual. Plus, he's a nobody as far as I know. So, I mean, I think that when I call with aces to a 4-bet, my hand's going to be a little bit less face up. He's a little bit more likely to be bluffing blind versus blind. And then I'm just going to play a flop, and even if it comes like King, Queen, Jack, I have no intention of folding in any way. So, I mean, that's a decent flop for me. Not great, not bad. I'm just going to show her this. I'm not going to slow play anymore because the board's just too dry. And in the same way, I can be shoving like ace queen of spades or ace queen offsuit or whatever. Ace 10, queen 10 spades, queen 10 offsuit. Let's see. Here on table 1, I raised 8-5 of hearts under the gun. This is a hand that I usually wouldn't see bet just because of how HT Max had been playing. Yeah, so I mean, Joe had kind of a hand that, I mean, I definitely got lucky for him to connect with top pair, but I mean, that was kind of where I was hoping that he would be at. And then obviously I got a really good flop, and I think his bet call there is also pretty standard. This turn, obviously, HT Max calls. I'm not going to really go for any kind of 2-barrel. I'm a little bit unhappy with my flop bet, actually. And then that turn is just not so great for me at all. And I'm obviously going to check and then check the river if I get the option, which I did not. So, very basic and easy fold there. So yeah, I'm gonna call twos on table 1. If it had been heads up, I probably wouldn't have. I'd probably just openly fold it. But because it's 3-way, I can reasonably expect to get paid off enough times when I hit a set that it's probably gonna be okay to call. Here, ooh, I mean, I figure ooh's just taking a stab at it, but there's not really much I can do with twos on that kind of board. It's just kind of one of those spots where you have to be like, oh well, oh well, and then just kind of fold and be a bit upset about it. Um, do do do. I'm gonna raise 3-4 spades just because, again, Vernon had been pretty tight and not really up to too much of anything. It's a hand that would fold against more active people in the big blind. Because, I mean, you don't really just want to be building pots out of position with marginal hands against good players, or more to say active players, I guess. So, against a lot of people, I'm going to fold there. But I elected to open against Vernon, and I'm probably going to keep doing so until he's 3-betting me more often or calling and playing on flops more often. Table 3, Punketti call or raised, and I called, and the flop went check check. He makes a lot of like delayed C bets and that kind of stuff, so I'm gonna call once pretty happily. If he does 2-barrel, probably flip a coin on it. Probably fold, I guess, to a 2-barrel usually. But he did check behind on the river, and it did end up being good. Pandora's Bucks just sat down. He is, to my knowledge, another really tight player. Though, I mean, I couldn't really swear to it. I don't think I've played with him enough. So, I mean, I'm also gonna, at least until I see otherwise, I'm gonna probably kind of let him do his thing. I will play 4-5 diamonds here. I mean, that's a place I will 3-bet a decent amount of the time, but I like to just call this time. It's gonna be 3-way. Again, ooh, stabs at it. I started to check raise, and then again, I just kind of bit my tongue and elected to fold. There's not too many hands, unless if he has 8s or 6s. There's not a lot of hands I feel that he won't fold by the river. But again, I didn't feel like my image at the time was too great for getting big folds. So I like to just fold and play another hand. Wait another time or whatever. Here's some of the tables that are kind of starting to break. I think Punketti, maybe it was Punketti who was just leaving, which is surely a good thing. So yeah, now with Punketti gone, I'm kind of, or almost gone. I feel like I should kind of be opening back up because Punketti was the main person who was kind of making that not happen. So the table full of regulars, I mean, you either want to well, I mean, you can really do whatever you want, but you can either be kind of tight and pick spots and just play really ABC and then with like sound bluffs here or there, or you can just kind of open everything and take advantage of the fact that people are going to be doing that against like 16 tabling regulars or whatever. So I mean, I prefer the latter, at least to start off, and then when times are good for it. But sometimes people at your table will just kind of not allow it, and you have to switch to the former, which is kind of what happened with Punketti. Or then sometimes you can just kind of say like, well, no, I'll teach you, and then you kind of try to dump on them, but that's what I tried earlier, and it surely did not work. So then I was kind of forced to go back and play ABC-ish. But I mean, that's okay. It's not the worst thing that's ever happened. Alright, I do flop a flush draw. Again, this is a hand that, usually I'm going to be folding, but 5 hours into my session or whatever, I decided that a call would be better. He checked back, and obviously I'm going to bet the turn. And if he calls, I'm probably betting the river usually, and expecting to fold more often than not. Usually like closer to pot's good, because you see so many like 7/8s and 8s and 6s in their range that you don't want to really bet I mean, the more you can bet, the better, pretty much. You don't want to make a small bet where they're just like, well, I guess I call. You want to really make them be like, oh man, pot. Now I have to decide. And usually they decide on the old folderini. Obviously, I get 3-bet by Muck Boy here, and I will most likely 4-bet given that I 4-bet already and failed. I elected to not 3-bet tens here, just because I wanted my 4-bet to look a little bit more spazzy, I think. Again, this is for certain players only. I mean, some people you want to 3-bet both, some people not. Um, I'm obviously going to 4-bet here, given that I've already 4-bet once and all that kind of stuff, just because we've been battling pre a lot. Also, Muck Boy made a squeeze, a really standard squeeze spot, and I have nines, and it's not really a spot that I like just shoving in there, but he's getting pretty out of line pre-flop, and it's in a lot of the obvious spots, so I just can't really let him. I mean, my hand's just too good there against his range. And then I have the nuts again on table 5 and 3-bet again. 150 or 160 is fine. I believe that both players call. Bernie RS2 is someone I don't recognize at all. I decided to make a pretty large c-bet, just because for what are a reasonably large c-bet. Just because I feel like fish just kind of freak out against them for whatever reason. He shoved instantly. He has 6-5, so I mean I think his shove is really standard, but that's a pretty brutal run out for me. But I did get lucky that I had a straight draw. Yeah, 6-5. Woo. And here Muck Boy raised, and I call with Queen 10 position. Both players checked, and that's a pretty easy spot for me to try to steal away. Because I have a lot of kings in my range. I'm even going to bet like 9-10 here. Tens. Any king, really, if I want. So, plus the set, obviously. So there's a lot of believable hands in my range. Ooh ends up calling. And, the 3 is not the best card to 2-barrel. But I was just kind of experimenting with barreling because of that. Turns out it's just generally not that good of an idea. As you'll see in a minute. I go to bet like 170 or something. And I mean, I am going to bet this with King 10 and obviously a set and whatever 3 I ended up betting and all that kind of stuff. But realistically, there's not a whole ton of hands in my range. But we both know that, so I was just kind of playing around with seeing what would happen. And I do obviously have outs to the jack, to a jack, and it turns out a queen as well. Again, I feel like if he's calling on that turn, he's probably calling on a river. I feel like he kind of made up his mind. So I do end up just checking, and he has tens. So, I mean, it was just kind of a big fail on my part. But, I mean, it's always good to experiment with stuff. See what does and doesn't work, even if you think that it might not or will or whatever. On table 1, I raise pre and then bet the flop. Turns an ace, it's a good card for me to 2-barrel. Vernon's been pretty tight, but, you could still have, like, tens or 9-8 or king, queen, king, jack. Hands that they all might fold to a 2-barrel. He does call, so at this point I'm thinking that he has a king, queen, king, jack type of hand. Maybe even like tens or something. I do like for a 2-barrel or a 3-barrel here. Other times I might have bet like 380 or 370, but I just wanted it to look very, like, very standard. I didn't want, like, any message to be with it. Because obviously, if I bet, like, 400 or something, or 390, I'm just like, this is a big bet. I either have it or I don't. And I just wanted to be like, oh, I got 3-barreled, and that's that. And I probably have to fold a king now, because that's just how it is. And, I mean, a lot of times when that scare card comes on the turn, you are going to have to bet the turn and the river. Because people know enough by now that they're going to be like, oh, well, scare card, I have to call again. And then once you 3-barrel the river, they're just like, oh, well, I guess he really has it. So, like, a lot of the times, you're going to have to at least be 2-barreling the scare cards. I ended up heads up with Ooh for a little bit longer. I don't think I played much after the video ends. I think it ends up being pretty basic. Haven't actually been watching while I've been talking it, but I think a lot of times when 6 max tables just kind of go to heads up, it's kind of just a formality. Usually you don't see, like, it plays a lot different than actual heads up tables would, just because people are so busy with all the other tables, and it still kind of feels like it's 6 max anyways, so people are kind of still playing tighter and not really running big bluffs and stuff. So, I mean, I think it's more playing, or at least for now, we're playing more for the sake of getting tables started and whatnot. Not to say that, I mean, we're not going to bluff each other and all that, but, I mean, it feels like if we were playing heads up on a heads up table, it feels like this game is a lot more passive than that would be. Let's see, I'm getting a 3-bet by Muckboy again. Pretty sure I fold again. But, again, I mean, I haven't played with him a lot, so at least I'm kind of getting a feeling for what he's about. Haven't really seen him play too much post-flop, but, I mean, I was under the assumption that he was pretty tight and straightforward and pretty solid post-flop, and it was just kind of over crazy pre-flop to make up for that. So, I mean, in future sessions, I'll probably try to either take more hands to the flop against him and try and outplay him that way, or just kind of get in his face a little bit more pre-flop. Probably the latter, and just kind of see what happens. Here Oscar sat down. I've never ever seen him before. His picture's pretty scary though. No Country for Old Men, good movie. And also Big City Titty sat down, who I could only assume is probably the worst given his name. I think I did stop actually when the video ends, but I mean, it's almost a shoo-in that guy is the worst. And if that guy is somehow someone really good who picked that name, more power to him, because he fooled me right off the bat. Well, I get 3-bet by Muckboy again. This is probably like the 10th time or something. I don't know what I do, because I forget. I guess folding is still probably the standard, and it's going to be the best. I don't really like getting in here against him, and I also don't like 4-betting a hand that is as strong as 5s. Oh, doesn't matter. And then having to fold to a shove, so I am going to elect to fold. Ooh does cold 4-bet him, which he's been known to do. Muckboy shoves, and Ooh folds pretty quickly, so I guess Ooh just had the absolute airball. I guess I picked a good time not to fight back against Muckboy. I'm pretty sure he's not going to 5-bet shove there as a bluff, so... Oh, Big City Titty, I guess got stacked. I could have re-isolated... I elected not to re-isolate with Ace King there because, I'm going to be calling there with pretty much any ace or anything. So it's kind of the balance for the times that Muckboy tries to re-isolate, and then like I can shove over that very happily. Because I mean he's just gonna be shoving such a wide range. Because I think he got stacked the hand before, so he's just kind of, yeah, he's gonna have so many hands that I'm gonna gamble with him and be calling a lot. So I mean if Muckboy has any one of a ton of hands that he could re-isolate with, I'm very happy to have a hand that I can reshove with. Alright, so that's about it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. questions, comments, or whatever, leave them on the forums. Alright, thanks a lot.